collectors know the joy of being surrounded by wonderful objects. The items in our collection, studying those items, it adds depth, richness, color to our lives. And Mr. Simpson essentially merged his affection for American history with nostalgic memories of when he collected coins and used to search through rolls of coins, searching for those elusive dates that he could sell for a small premium. And that's really not a very uncommon story in the numismatic community of how so many collectors got started.
You go back in time, you know, I'm a the war baby as we're aging, but we could actually find coins of value in circulation much easier than today. So a lot of the older collectors come out of that era where they were just young kids, and then as they could afford the hobby and dig deeper into it, many of them put together some pretty good collections. But you know, what I've learned from coins is I certainly we put together the largest pattern collection that's probably ever been assembled, in this being kind of the holy grail of that effort. But there's only one gold set in patterns where there's multiplicity of same year coins, and this is 4 different metals including gold, and it's rarely been seen. Most coin nerds that see it just kind of their hair kind of stands up on the back of their neck because it's just incredible.
Mr. Simpson really found a great balance between rarity and quality. Over the years, I've seen Mr. Simpson decline plenty of very, very rare coins because they just lacked special eye appeal or particularly high quality. Conversely, I've seen him pass on many coins that were very high quality or exhibiting exceptional eye appeal because they really weren't inherently scarce.
My first criteria for collecting is eye appeal. You know, once we get past history, which is the most interesting technical part, then to me coins are art. And so I selected my coins based on eye appeal, which is becoming more popular nowadays with this CAC service, which is basically somebody else confirming that it has good eye appeal.
Because you need somebody else to tell you the thing that you can see with your own eye.
Well, I think personally I have some talent for it, but I don't think everybody does. You know, it's kind of like picking your suits out. Some people can, some people can't.
But did you prefer the beauty of the coin over its story?
No, not if it has a great story.
Okay.
But like I say, once you get past the history part, eye appeal was everything to me. And then technically, I think eye appeal can make a MS-65, that grade, worth 50 to 100% more, depending on how it looks.
Right.
And if it's, now as you go up the scale, if you can get an MS-68 or 9 with tremendous eye appeal, then you really got something.
Right.
You know, collectors are natural hunters. It brings us this great thrill when we locate a coin that fits our collecting goals. And then from there, once we've acquired it, we become these temporary custodians for some period of time. And then as life goes on, our interests change, or we have other life events that cause us to move in a different direction. And we also take some joy knowing that these items are going to find another great home and bring joy to some other collector, as well as providing more historical context for all the people down throughout a pedigree or the provenance of a coin.
the fun of it was building it, okay? And so, and people like me who are, I say, builders, you know, partly the thrill is gone, you know, some, but not totally. So what I've done is I've kept a lot of them, such as that,
Right.
which I would encourage my children to never sell. And so and then part of it is, you know, there's a couple of thousand patterns, and I had 17 or 1800.
Right.
And I look at things differently now that I'm older. Things need to be where they're loved the most, okay?
Right.
And I can't love that many coins. I need some help. And so we're going to share with the community and the investment community that thrill for them to own that coin that they've been chasing, wanting, would like to hold, like to own, and then spread the joy, I would call it. And that's sincere.
I did want to ask you, I want to go back to something you said a minute ago, which is the idea that you can't love them all.
Yeah.
It's often said that anybody who's a collector of anything, I collect certain things, you collect coins, we're temporary custodians of history in the things we collect. Is that how you think of coin collecting? And I'm also kind of curious how your perception of collecting has changed over the period of time in which you've been collecting, because I do actually want to go back to something you said about your childhood in a moment, but let's start there.
Yeah, it's true not only with collections but possessions in general. There's a cycle you go through in life, which is when you're younger, your perspective is infinity, and you're immortal, and so you're an accumulator. And at some point, it goes the other way, where you think of yourself more as a steward, and then what's the ultimate resolution of this asset? Is, should I share it with other collectors, leave it to my kids? What am I going to do? And so, but same with real estate, or, you know, and again, you go back to, we tend to overclutter our lives and get beyond our capacity to appreciate what we have in general. And so you reach it, I'm 72, so you reach the age where you're thinking about it differently, and you're more in the aware that you were the custodian. And a lot of people, and Todd could verify this, are the fun for them was building it.
Right.
And then some people totally get away from an asset once it's built, or a collection. I'm not that way.
Mr. Simpson is different than most collectors, really in two respects. One, certainly his financial capabilities allowed him to acquire really any coin at any price that he so desired. Not everyone has that luxury. Number two, Mr. Simpson practiced really connoisseurship above any other collecting goals. By that I mean, most collectors work towards completion of a certain finite set, say Standing Liberty Quarters from 1916 to 1930. Mr. Simpson did complete some sets, but he never felt pressured or rushed to fill that hole that he needs, that particular mint mark, that particular issue. Rather, I watched him over the years really patiently wait for just the exact right coin, and he seemed to be okay not completing a set, as long as he was acquiring coins within a certain series of coins, or a certain series that he just knew to be exceptional. He didn't feel compelled to own every single issue, just the very best, the ones that really moved him.
I was never a numbers collector, meaning grade. It was, I do demand the number, but that's after I'm happy with the eye appeal.
Right.
And then I was never what I call a hole filler, which is, you know, I don't care what it looks like. if I have to look at a extra fine 35 or something to fill that hole, that's okay. Well, I'm not interested in that if I don't like looking at the coin, because it's okay that you don't have every last technical hole filled, and it becomes a compulsion. It's been a pretty good trick of the coin industry, I think, to sell that concept, because it creates demand where there might not be that much demand. Right. But I do have, I would say, the finest set of St. Gaudens, and the finest set is the $10 Indian piece in my hands, and I'm going to keep those.
One of the best parts of my job is that I get to meet some really interesting and entertaining people. And Mr. Simpson is one of those people, and really one of the highlights of my career. He's, of course, a very successful guy, one of the great Texas American success stories. But he's also, and he's a very intelligent guy and interesting to talk to. But he's also just really a class act, and very generous in the way that he shares his thinking about how he collects and why he decides to acquire something or decides not to acquire something. If I had to identify a character trait in Bob Simpson that defines both him as a business person and as a collector, is his ability to make tough decisions really quickly. That aids a collector investor well in, say, in an auction room, where oftentimes you need to make a very split decision. Do I keep my paddle raised and bid a little bit more aggressively on something, or do I just lower my paddle, tip my hat to the other bidder, and move on to the next one? Mr. Simpson's one of those guys that's not afraid to make decisions, and he can usually make the right decisions, again, in a very short period of time.
Did you view coin collecting as risky?
I viewed it as the opposite. It's where you transfer some gains that may have been because of risk. For example, trading in the stock market paid for a lot of my coins, okay? And so I'd say, well, I'll put it over here in coins and pay for them at no debt, and then they can't go away. Values can change, but so I viewed it as the opposite, as a haven more than a risk asset.
Did your perception of change, of collecting, change over a period of time? Because you begin, and I want to go back to this idea of when you were 12 and you were driving and you would make your father stop into a town and just get you a roll of coins. Yeah. What were you looking for in that roll of coins?
Well, there was, again, you take a Mercury dimes, okay? There were the most famous 1916 Ds were being found. And what did that mean in terms of, I don't know, maybe $300 or something in those times, or again, the copper penny. I'd look at rolls of halves. You could still get Walking Liberty halves, and you had a chance there to get, a fairly expensive.
But you knew at 12 years old, you're like a kid who buys a pack of cards thinking he might find a 52, you might find a Mickey Mantle in 1952. I mean, yeah. you sort of looked at it that way. Instead of buying a pack of cards, you were getting a roll of coins.
Yeah, and remember, in terms of risk, there wasn't any.
Right, because you're just swapping out a dollar bill for, or $10.
Well, you didn't pay any.
Right.
You paid 50 cents.
You got 50 cents.
You had the upside, and the way we'd look at it as an adult, you had the upside, no downside, and so you found a pretty interesting thing to do.
Right, you just, at the end of the day, you just had a handful of change as opposed to a paper bill.
And you could have made a few $100 in your 12.
As I mentioned before, Mr. Simpson is the consummate connoisseur, and like most connoisseurs, is driven to acquire the very best, whether it's a painting or a piece of real estate, a business, or a rare coin. And oftentimes, acquiring those items requires paying a premium. One of the things that I've noticed about Mr. Simpson and other successful connoisseurs like him over the years is that oftentimes it's those items that they think, they walked away from the transaction, from the auction room thinking, I think I overpaid for that particular item. But in retrospect, it's often those items that we think we paid too much for that actually turn out to be the best investments, the best return on our investment. It's just one of those interesting phenomena when it comes to tangible assets and buying quality.
I learned to, over the years, to buy the best. And the best is the most expensive. It'll also do the best in the future because financial performance just goes hand in hand. And so you're doing yourselves no favor to buy the quote apparent bargain because that can't be, whatever it caused that can't be fixed. But I learned a long time ago that the best usually comes at a price that hurts.
Something that Heritage's top coin auctioneer, Mike Sadler, often reminds bidders when we're in the auction room is that buying coins that are provenance, pedigreed to certain collections, should give the bidder a much higher degree of confidence. For example, in the case of Mr. Simpson, here you have a person who practiced an obsession for quality, used 15, 20 or more years of his experience in buying the very best, knowing what he really wanted, discarding those that he didn't. And I think that in this particular sale, of the, say, approximately 1,500 coins from Mr. Simpson's collection that are being offered, there's not a single weak link in the entire group. And so I believe that other collector, investors, dealers that are looking to bid on these coins should have a very high degree of confidence that what they're getting is something that somebody else has really done their homework on. A great expert, I might add, has done that homework.
I wonder, and I'm just so fascinated, and I keep going back to that 12-year-old in the back seat of the car on the family trips going through coins and trying to find that thing. I wonder what that 12-year-old would say to the man 60 years later who acquired such an extraordinary collection and who is parting with some of those. I wonder what that 12-year-old, if that 12-year-old could have believed that he could have amassed such a remarkable collection.
No, I mean, first of all, he couldn't have seen that coming. But again, the concept of giving them back to the community or fellow collectors is a maturity thing. He wouldn't even cross his mind or worry about it. Right. But I think it's the right thing to do. And I've been wanting to do it for years to some extent, but I just hadn't had time. Right. And then it is a painful process. I spent days doing it, and then I am selling some that, on a different day I might have kept them. I don't know, but they were bubble. Some of them, it was. The theory in general was fine. 2,000 coins. I think the total collection is 2,500 or something. But we're selling over half the number. I know there's people that would appreciate some of these coins.
Absolutely. And
cherish them where I don't, and it's almost just wrong, to be that gluttonous.
Well, it is. I mean, that's part of the joy of collecting, right? I mean, as a collector myself, when someone says, I want to sell you this thing that you didn't think you would ever be able to acquire, it's because you cherish it and because you know that one day you might hand it down or one day you might sell it to somebody else who loves it for the same reason that you love it.
And then some coins, on down the scale, which you thought, maybe, is there anybody that loves those? And there are. Okay, it's just a different guy, a different collection, a different viewpoint, and so but I do know that, not only do I not get to see them, so there's no chance that I could appreciate that many coins.
Right.
And some of them, that I would have 3 or 4 of the same coin, pattern number. Again, that would be a coin that I loved it. Every time I saw it, I bought it. Now, those should be put back
Absolutely.
and let somebody else have a go at it.